Hi, everyone. For this podcast, this is going to be part 3. And then next week, I'm going to shift gears to a different topic because even I get a little tired of talking about my childhood. So you might be tired of hearing of it. I did a part 1 and a part 2, and this is going to be part 3. And it's about right because now if you haven't listened, listen to part 1 and listen to part 2. And part 2 leaves off with me living in Parkland. I had the chance encounter with the man who sexually abused me. I met him on the side of the road. Literally, he pulled over and did his frickin' grooming magic bullshit. That would start actually a long relationship with that guy. It was really weird, convoluted, confusing. So that had happened. That was at the tail end of the last podcast. So if you want to go back and listen to Mondays, you can hear about that. But we're living in Parkland. Mom is married. You know, I always say we think Mom was married 7 times. So let's count. Maybe it's not 7. Maybe it is. I'm not sure. Her first marriage would have been to Jerry Emerson, my brother Bob's biological father. Her second marriage would be to my sister Sherry and I's biological father, Danny Douglas. My sister Tina's biological father, she never met him. None of us ever met him. Mom told us later in life, much later, that she remembers his name was Kenny Rogers, not the famous Kenny Rogers, but that's what she remembers. So that was a fling or something. She never was in a relationship or married that guy. But so marriage number 1 was to Jerry. Marriage number 2 was to Danny. Marriage number 3 would be Johnny Revelle, the one man that you'll hear me talk about that had a huge, huge positive impact on me and my life to this very day. Marriage number 4 was to Uncle Tom, Uncle Tom / stepdad. Marriage number 5. Oh gosh, what was Ed? Ed, did they ever get married? She was with him for a long time. And then there was another guy. Was his name William or Bill? They got married. And oh, yeah, I think they did. Because is he the one that died and then she got a Social Security check? And why she didn't? No, I don't remember. Okay, and then there was another guy. We're pretty sure she married him. I think she married him. He lived in Spokane. Oh, I can't think of his name. So that's, what are we at? 6? 5, 6. And 7. And then John. This was much later in her life. And she was with him until she passed. And, you know, John, I have a good relationship with John. He lives here in Ellensburg where I live. And I've always said about John, I wish Mom would have met him much earlier in life. But I also say I don't think my mom was ready to settle down until much later in life. And settle down meaning she went through a lot of men. So those are the marriages. There were also committed relationships here and there. And she went back and forth to Jerry, to Danny. But she didn't with Uncle Tom. She didn't with the men later in her life, in her 30s, 40s, and 50s. But so at this point, I'm back to the story, part 3. We're living in Parkland. Mom's married to Uncle Tom. Kenny, me, and Terry are the only ones left at home at this point. My sister Sherry married and was having kids. My sister Tina was married, had her first son. They started their venture into being married. My brother had long moved out and was in his first marriage at this point. He has 4 girls. My sister Tina had Robbie Was it? No. Oh gosh, I just lost his name. If she listens to this, she's going to be upset with me, and so is he. At any rate, Sherry, my sister Sherry, she had my oldest niece Dawn, and then it would have been Rendale. So this is kind of where we're at. The only ones left at home were me, Kenny, and Terry's, my stepbrothers slash cousins. And I'm pretty much just surviving, I guess I would say. I was not engaged at school at all. I would get up in the morning like I was going to school. I had a friend I used to hang out with a lot in Parkland, Spanaway, and him and I would connect. He lived in the neighborhood, and we would go to Safeway early in the morning, steal alcohol, Mad Dog 2020 and Old English 800, and drink early. So my drinking I was well into starting drinking, smoking pot, smoking cigarettes. By this point, I'm pretty sure Mom knew I smoked cigarettes. That was pretty common in our family. Like Terry smoked, Kenny smoked, and our parents smoked too, cigarettes. And it was just kind of like, well, if you're going to do it, at least do it around us. Not so much with the drinking and smoking pot. It was at this period of time I'll never forget. Wow, this was a pretty powerful moment in time. So Uncle Tom / stepdad, he was a good man. He was a really, really good guy. He really loved my mom. I know he cared about us. He did have an impact on me in some positive ways with structure, and he worked and always cared. But I'll never forget one day we were living in the trailer court out in Parkland on 138th, and we had a cousin who lived in the trailer court. And so, I just went over there to see what Mom was doing, and I go in and I just opened the door. We didn't knock. It was family, and I think her name was Candy, the cousin. So I walk in, and there's my mom taking a massive bong hit. Like, I'll never forget it. 15 I was, I think 14, 15. Now, mind you, I was smoking pot. I was smoking cigarettes, but my mom didn't know, or if she did, we didn't really talk about it. And I walk in and I see this, and I'm like in shock. Like, because I knew my mom, when she was with Tom, she didn't drink much. She drank more in her earlier years. But Tom was a pretty straight and narrow guy. He smoked cigarettes. That was about it. I don't think he drank at all. I know I talked to him. He used to drink in his younger years, but he didn't in later life, in his 40s when he became an adult, 30s, 40s, whatever. So there's my mom smoking pot. And I'm like, oh, hey, Mom. And she's like, if you tell your dad, because she wanted us to call all our men dad, even our uncles. Weird. If you tell him, I'll kill you. I'm like, well, nope, I won't tell him, and you won't tell him either about me. So that was a moment in time. Interesting that I just was like, wow, okay. So school. So I'm enrolled. I guess I should say I was enrolled at Spanaway Lake High School. I went to 10th grade. This is when it was junior high was 7th, 8th, 9th, and then high school was 10th, 11th, 12th. So I remember being enrolled, and I remember the school. I kind of remember going to school. I kind of remember going to some classes, but not a lot. I did a lot of partying. I would go to school just enough to say I was there and then skip. I remember skipping school all the time. Pretty frequent. Had that secret in my brain with Lynn Gilmore. In my young teenage mind, I'm like, well, this is weird. I don't like it, but it was a source of money. And so that's how I got my money. I remember being kids with Tom. I think we had chores and we could get an allowance, but it was never really consistent. Because even with Uncle Tom, Mom was never good with money. She never had a lot to be good with, but even with what she had, she was not good with. And I remember with Tom, when she was with Uncle Tom, and if you're just listening to this, yes, my mom married my uncle. I'm sorry, it's weird, but that's what it was. But they would play bingo. This is before casinos were legal. And in Pierce County and Tacoma, there were bingo halls all over. And that's what they had on the Indian reservations and, of course, all over. And so if we wanted to find Mom on any particular evening, they were usually at bingo. And you might think, oh, what's the big deal? No, they played bingo a lot. And I know they struggled with money because I remember them going to probably maybe what were some of the original payday loan type places. There was a place they went to get loans. So back to the allowance, I think we were supposed to get allowance, but it was kind of really dependent on, I think, if they could actually pay it. So we moved. I remember this. So I'm 15-ish. 15. Terry married and moved out. Kenny, I think he moved out with Terry, because I remember this apartment complex I'll talk about in a second. So for the first time in my entire childhood, I'm the only one in the house. It was just me, Mom, and Tom, Uncle Tom / stepdad. And we moved from Parkland to Salishan. It's a low-income area of Tacoma. We moved into an apartment, a townhouse, that was on 46th and Portland. And I remember it distinctly because for the first time in my life, being, the youngest of four, and then Terry and Kenny move in when I'm just starting to get to where I'd be the only child. Alas, that was a couple year process added to. Then they moved out. So it's just me and Mom and Tom, and we move into this townhouse, and I had my own room. I remember it. And Mom, again, I think I said it in episode 1, we moved a lot. As you can see, even when Mom had a man, we just seemed to move a lot. And I can only guesstimate that it had to do with, I know when Mom was single, she didn't have the money, we'd get evicted, or she was running from danger, from domestic violence. But even like with Uncle Tom, I think they really struggled financially, and that was likely the reason we moved around. Now this one could have been, it was like, well, it's just 3 of us. We were living in a trailer. Alas, we moved again to 46 in Portland. I'm pretty sure the apartment complex is still there. And I had my own room for the first time in my life. I don't remember going to school. I'm sure I was enrolled in school. I think by this time I'm dating who would become my first wife and my son's mom. I remember she really tried encouraging me to go back to school. And so I remember for a short period of time enrolling at Foss High School in Tacoma. I remember going there. I remember taking keyboarding classes, typing classes. And I remember being high a lot because I smoked pot. I drank a lot, and I skipped school. So I tried. I remember I kind of made some type of effort, and I almost think it was like an alternative high school type program. But Cindy really tried to get me to go back to school. And then, not sure exactly how long we were in that apartment in Salishan, but I'm going to say maybe a year because this is when I moved out. Mom and Uncle Tom are going to make another move, and Tom worked at the shipyards in Bremerton, which was about, for him, an hour plus commute each way every day from Tacoma. And so I don't remember being part of the conversation. I just remember, they were going to move to Bremerton, and I'm like, Shelton. I think they moved to Shelton or Bremerton. And I'm like, nope, I'm out. And I moved out. I was 15 and a half. And so this is where that apartment complex that my stepbrother / cousins were living at. Terry was married. He lived in an apartment. I'm pretty sure Kenny stayed with them. And I had met this guy who lived in the apartment complex, who I still talk to today. Good guy, Todd. And I think he was in his early 20s, and I hope he listens to this. But he let me move in with him. And I'm 15 and a half, and I moved out. Mom and Uncle Tom moved to Bremerton or Shelton, one of the two, because I think it was Shelton, because I remember going to visit Mom there. Alas. So I moved out, I was high school dropout, and I got a job. My brother was married, I told you, and he was living in Tacoma in University Place, and he was working for his father-in-law, who owned a pretty popular restaurant in Tacoma. And this is in the early mid 80s. We're talking 84, 83, 84. And it was called Mr. Munchies. And it was in University Place. And anyone listening to this and has history of the area, it bordered on University Place right by Tacoma Community College. And he was cooking there. And I got a job there as a dishwasher. I needed a job, and I remember where the apartment complex, it's still there. It's right by Cheney Stadium on Center and Tyler on the corner. And so I'm on my own, 15 and a half. And this for our family, right? If I look at my siblings and I, was par for the course. The first one to move out was my brother, and I didn't really point to, I'll do it now, even as kids, each of us kind of moved away at different points in our childhood. Meaning, I remember I lived with family friends Judy and Al for a little bit. I'm not sure why. I know my brother lived with our grandpa Soundsteby for a little while. I think Sherry or Tina lived with Judy and Al for a little while. So there was kind of this moving in and out when we were kids. I remember being young, and I don't remember why. But Bob moved out when Mom married Johnny. So this is back, in the mid-late 70s. When we moved to Arizona, I remember Bob came down for a minute, and then he ended up moving back to Washington, and I'm pretty sure moved in with our grandpa Soundsteby. They had a pretty strong relationship. This grandpa Soundsteby was my mom's stepfather. Her biological father, Grandma Soundsteby, passed really young of cancer. But Bob and Grandpa Soundsteby had a strong relationship. So Bob moved out first, pretty young. I think he was 15, 16, and then he went in the military. My sister Tina married young. Who was first? I think Tina was first. She married and moved out. Was she 18? I don't think she was 18. Maybe she was. But then Sherry, I remember Sherry met a guy, and Randy Steele. I used to run around with him, and it was not always good. A lot of drinking and just crazy behavior. Alas, she wanted to get married, and she was too young for Washington State. So here you go. You ready for this? So my mom and this family friend, Judy, that we'd known forever, she passed in the last couple of years, but was part of our family system for years. They got in a car and drove to Idaho because Sherry was able to get married in Idaho, I'm pretty sure at 16. And that was her first marriage. So she moved out. So then I moved out at 15 and a half. And my decision to move out was because I didn't want to move to Bremerton. Nope, that was not what and my mom let me. This is all, this was like, Mom, I don't remember there being an argument or my mom saying, no, I just don't. I moved in with Todd. He had an apartment. he was he could buy beer. He was old. He was working. I think he was working for his dad in his cabinet making shop, and he had cool cars. And he was a good guy. He was not a creep like Lynn Gilmore. He was a good guy, and him and I created a friendship because he did drink. We both drank, but we both worked, so I would work, and then on the weekends we would party. We would go down to Owens Beach at Point Defiance and pick up girls. It's actually, I met a girl down there I would have a serious relationship with, Dawn. Yeah, that was, I moved out, and I was just living my life. I was, like I said, I was working and partying. I didn't really have any plan. I was dating a lot of different girls. My dating relationships with girls, well, if you've been listening, I didn't learn healthy skills from my family, right? From my mom or any of the dads of the week. And so for me in my teenage years, girls and sex and my views on it all, it was convoluted with the relationship with Lynn Gilmore. It was just, it was a lot. So I was not one to have healthy boyfriend-girlfriend relationships. If I always say poor Cindy, she bore the brunt, and this is my son's mother, my first wife. She bore the brunt of me being completely unfaithful. I would cheat on her regularly, and she would always take me back. And then the same thing happened with other girls. So again, 15 and a half, turning 16, just kind of surviving, I guess. Looking back, I think, wow, I think of my grandson or my own son. My own son's had his own story. But I think of my grandson who's, Anthony's in his teen years, and fortunate for him is his dad and me, his grandfather, we've turned this tide of unhealthy behavior. And right now he's at middle school in 8th grade. He's playing basketball. He's got strong family support. Just wasn't the case for me. So here we go. Kenny. So Kenny's living in the apartment complex. Terry's living there. He's married, having his first baby. Kenny, mostly Kenny, but I would do it with him. Kenny used to hitchhike all over. That's how he got around to do whatever Kenny did. He would go fishing, and I don't remember if Kenny was working or not. I don't know what he was kind of doing with himself at the time. He and I had spent a lot of time together when we lived with Mom and Uncle Tom, but once Kenny moved out, we didn't hang out quite as much. But he used to hitchhike all over Tacoma, right? We didn't have money, so he hitchhiked. And this is, so where are we at? 80, 83, 84, 83, somewhere in there. I would have graduated in 85, so that would have put me at 18. So yeah, so we're 1983, and I'll never forget, he said, yeah, I got a ride from these recruiters, these military recruiters. And they said, if we give you a ride, you got to promise to come listen to our spiel. Again, mid-80s, there was no conflict really to speak of going on around the world. So they were just begging for people to come in the military. And this one fateful Saturday, again, this was not planned. It wasn't in my, goal list. He said, I'm going to go up to the Tacoma Mall to the recruiting station, which is still there in the same building. And he says, I'm going to listen to their spiel. I'm like, okay, I'll go with you. Right? So here we go. So we go to the Army recruiting station and go in, and I vaguely remember going there, but we went, and we took the entrance test. The ASVAB is what it's called. And Kenny took it. I took it. Mind you, Kenny was a high school dropout. I was a high school dropout. We dropped out probably about the same grade. So, about an 8th, 9th grade education level. Kenny took the test. I took the test. They, probably shook Kenny's hand and said, hey, thanks, but no thanks. And then they looked at me and they said, we want you. And I'm like, oh. So mind you, I didn't have really anything going on. I was working, just kind of surviving. And they did a good job because I'm like, okay, let's do this. So I'm about 16 and a half at this time. And you can go in the military at 17 if your parents sign for you. So guess what? Mom was happy, happy that I had some direction to go. And so she signed for me to go in the military, and I did all the, signed on the dotted line. And I'll never forget the recruiter. We got in a Plymouth K car. If you remember that era of cars, they were the olive drab green. And we, the military recruiter guy and me drove out to Mom's in Shelton. And this was kind of funny because I'd never known my mom to do this before. Upon arrival, Mom, I'll just never forget, Mom had baked a loaf of bread and was just ready, right? So my mom always wanted the best for us. And so I think her knowing that her baby boy, her youngest, was going to go in the military and maybe get some direction in life, she was very much for that. So I signed up to go in the military. And that's how I ended up in, literally by accident. I tell people that. And so here's the story of it. It was not planned. It was not like, oh, Dad was in the military, so I'm going to go in. It was purely by accident. And so I signed all the documents, and then I had to wait till I turned 17 and then my next boot camp day. And I left for boot camp in June, because I turned 17 June 3rd, and I'm pretty sure I arrived June 24th. I could look at my my DD-214 that shows some dates. And I think I just stayed working. Poor Dawn. I was with a girl named Dawn, and if Dawn, you're listening, I'm sorry. Our relationship was probably pretty chaotic because I think she was doing a little bit of drinking. I remember that, but she was from a very, I would say, a good family. She was a cheerleader at Curtis High School. Like, wow, kid from the other side of the tracks. I'm dating this beautiful girl, and we're spending time. And I don't know if I had asked her to marry me yet. I started doing some of my mom's same behavior very young. I think I had, or maybe, anyway, I didn't tell her. I didn't have any conversations with the girl that I was in a serious relationship. I didn't tell her that I had signed up for the military until after it was done. And I'll never forget, she was not happy about that. And I do remember we made a decision that we were going to stay together. And that's right. Oh boy. Oh, David. Going in the military, so I didn't get to pick my job, which was 11 Bravo Grunt infantryman, but I got to pick my first duty station. And so I picked Germany. I was like, wow, that would be cool. I can go, and I think that was also part of the tension, part of the argument. She's like, okay, so now you're going to be gone for 18 months. And it wasn't in the cards for us to get married, because if I would have been married, she could have went with me. But she wasn't done with high school yet. I think she had another year because I went in at 17. That's right. The other requirement that they would take me in the military is I had to get my GED while I was in, which I did. But there we are. So I went in the military at 17 years old. Basic training. I still remember basic training. I have my pictures from basic training. I remember drill sergeant Montana. It was, for me, the first time in my life that I was exposed to structure, consistency, camaraderie. Everything you hear, I got a lot of that from the military. A lot. The ability to, work with others, like I said, the structure and the consistency, I absorbed a lot of that. And that's where I went. So I went to basic training at Fort Benning in the summer of '84. Ooh, that was hot. And then I came home. I remember I came home on leave for, I think, just a couple weeks before I shipped off to Germany for 18 months. So I don't think, no, I was not, I was 17 and a half years old when I went to Germany. Now, I'm going to go ahead and close this one up, and I think I'll just have a continuation for Monday of the story of my childhood and now into my early adulthood years. But I'm going to wrap this one up with just a summary of my time in Germany. So I did well in basic, didn't have any issues. I really, really absorbed and really like Drill Sergeant Montana. I really looked up to him. I learned pretty quickly to follow the rules, to do what you need to do to get through so you didn't get, more push-ups or any trouble. It was an environment that I thrived in. I did well in basic, and came home for the leave. Me and Dawn, who I was with at the time, we were engaged to be married, but the plan was to wait until I got back from Germany. Stay in touch. This is before the internet, so phone calls and letters. That did not happen. She ended up writing me a letter and saying, "Hey, I went to Germany and got just completely consumed in all this whole new world. Like, I was in the military. I'm in a foreign country. I arrived in Germany. It was before Christmas of 1984. I got to come home for a couple weeks and then I had to leave. I remember I didn't get to spend that Christmas at home. And I arrived in Germany in the winter of 84 and get to my duty station. So you go to Frankfurt and you in process. And then I got sent to this remote duty station called Kirchgoens, the Rock, Erzkasern. And my unit wasn't there. They were out in the field. So again, mind you, I'm a kid, but I'm just like, it's like drinking from a fire hose, like all this military life. And I'm brand new, and they're out in the field playing Army, right? That's what you do. You go train. This is mid 80s. There wasn't anything going on. So you got to train just in case something does. So they were out in the field, and I got sent to the field to go meet my unit. So I'm brand new. I'm an E1 private. And I remember meeting my unit, like I don't specifically, but I met them, and they're like, "Oh, you're the new guy. You're going to go do KP, which is go help the cooks and wash dishes and go do kitchen duty." I'm like, okay, I'm like, I go. Well, this is kind of a funny story. So I go, and they're like, "Well, it's just a few days, or I think a week at the most," because we were in the field for like 2 weeks. So I go, and they forgot about me. They didn't realize they forgot about me until they came through a chow line where I was helping. They're like, "Oh my gosh, wait, aren't you our guy?" Yeah. So my very first exposure to Germany and my unit was I got sent to KP duty, and they forgot about me. Alas. Here's what, in a nutshell, what my time in Germany consisted of, what I like to say. A lot of that, going to the field, playing Army. When we're in garrison, which is when you're not out playing Army, when you're just on post, it was like cleaning your gear or literally sweeping motor pool parking lots and keeping our stuff, it's just like, oh, you're doing repetitive stuff. So we did that during the week. So if we weren't in the field, we were in garrison, and on the weekends, we partied. That's what we did. We went out to Frankfurt or Wiesbaden. This is where I was getting my first real paychecks, first real money. I had zero money management skills. I don't even know how I did it, but to leave Germany, that was one area that I had to figure out because I owed the bank on post money because I would always overdraw my account. So money was quickly an issue for me because I didn't know how to manage my money. I would bounce checks. I remember this is when ATMs first became a thing, and you could pull out American money and German money, right? And I figured out, it's free money. It would just keep giving me money, but what I didn't realize, I think I did realize, and I took advantage of it after a bit, is that it overdrew my account. So I was always in trouble for that with my company commanders. And my drinking was already a problem before I went to Germany. Well, what is normal in Germany? Drinking. What is normal in the military? Drinking. So my drinking was off the charts. That's what I was doing during the week, and for sure on the weekends. Many of us were, but I was usually the soldier who, on many a Monday mornings, was standing in front of my first sergeant's desk or my company commander's desk, them going, "Okay, Douglas, what'd you do now?" Getting in a fight, breaking shit, arguing with people, who knows? I ran the gamut. And I remember this always being the conversation. "Douglas, you just need to control your drinking." And I'm trying, right? But I'm a kid, and alcoholic behavior was in full force. A lot of us smoked hash over there. You couldn't get marijuana, but we smoked hash. Did a lot of acid in Germany. Ooh, boy, that was kind of a crazy ride. This was early mid 80s, 84, 85. I got there in December of 84, came back in June of 86. That would be about right, I think. And that was really it. Girls, had one girlfriend, and I was really fortunate. This was pretty early on. It was a German girl. A lot of marriages happened in Germany. And if it wasn't for some guys in my unit kind of going, "Douglas, she wants to marry you, and it's not for why you think it was, like she just loved me and was doting on me." No, she just wanted to get married to go back to the States. I remember that. And I remember she was really nice, and I was like, nope. So broke up with her. The relationship with Dawn ended because I had gotten so consumed in all that was going on. I didn't write her letters. I didn't call her. And so she was like, "I'm done with you." It was later, before I came back, that me and Cindy, my son's mother, and who would become my first wife, kind of my high school sweetheart, Cindy and I met each other when I was about 12 and dated off and on. Her and I would get back together through letters and phone calls. And then I'll tell the rest on my next podcast. I'll go into my last year of the military and then my early 20s. That's it for this one. I hope you're enjoying the ride. And I like to close with this. It's my goal for my work that I do to help people see that they have it within them to do amazing things. You know, I think about accidentally going in the military. I think about moving out when I was 15 and a half. I think about that convoluted, abusive relationship with Lynn Gilmore. I think about all the dysfunction that I've had in my relationships with women and where I'm at in my life today. I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity, and I hope you can have this opportunity if you've had some similar experiences, and my life as a person in recovery. I'm grateful that I've been able to access resources to turn it all around. And so if you're out there and listening, I want you to know that you can do this. If you want to change your relationship with drugs and alcohol, you can do this. You can find your unique path to recovery and enjoy a life in recovery. If you experience a lot of dysfunction in your relationships with partners or with family, you can educate yourself. You can go to counseling. You can turn it around. Finances. I'm sure as I do this podcast, I'll talk about financial literacy, right? Like I had to learn how to run from a budget. And it's been people in my life along the way and programs I've been involved in along the way that have helped me to experience financial health. So you have it within you right now to do those things. Because I always like to say, if I can do this, I know you can do this. Love to all. Have a good day. There we go, friends.